As we've found with previous videos in this miniseries, Diablo 2 doesn't always disclose all of its secrets. The Sorceress is no exception. Today we're going to look at 7 things the players may not know about the Sorceress skills, some more uncommon than others. Number 1. Frozen Orb is loved by some players and degraded by others because it's no longer considered the strongest cold spell on the block. And they're right. In raw damage, it just doesn't keep up with Blizzard. But what if you could stack 16 of those ice bolts on a single target? You can. One thing a lot of new players don't realize is that when Frozen Orb reaches its maximum range, it releases 16 ice bolts all at once in a flourish, and, if aimed correctly, can hit all on a single target. Like Diablo, cause he's big. Number 2. Staying on Frozen Orb for a second, since this is one less people know about, but despite doing the final flourish when it gets blocked mid-flight, Frozen Orb sadly only releases an actual flourish at the end of its natural range, so pinning things against walls for that bonus damage we mentioned, sadly, doesn't work. Number 3. Keeping it chill, let's talk about Cold Mastery. The basic knowledge of this is that it decreases enemy cold resist whenever it comes to your hits. But there's 2 interesting things to know about this. On the plus side, this also increases the duration of cold and freeze effects thanks to that lower resistance on the enemies, which does directly impact those 2 effects specifically. Does not impact chill, that's an entirely different thing. But on the downside, despite that what people believe, it does not work towards removing cold immunity. Sadly, only lower resist and conviction can actually break immunities. Number 4. Moving over to something a bit more shocking, let's talk about Static Field. You probably think I'm here to give you the bad news about this skill, but I'm actually not. Since guess what? Static Field is the only percent reducer that actually scales with player count, so zap it up, my caster friend. Though I guess I should tell you, like all of these skills, it is affected by resist, so lightning resistant enemies, don't expect this to work on them very well, especially not Gloams. Number 5. Sticking with the Sparky, let's talk about Lightning Mastery, though this also applies to Fire Mastery as well. Yes, they boost lightning and fire damage, but they also do this for attacks and skills. The real kicker is it lets you double dip with melee while using elemental damage boosting skills. For example, the Dream Sorceress amplifies Holy Shock as a skill, and then amplifies it again on striking, essentially applying double the mastery to the attack. This goes with Fire too with things like Enchant. It is worth noting though that this was actively patched out for range attacks, so you only get a single boost at a distance. Number 6. I know we mentioned Enchant before, and with the note that you can't double dip Enchant now with ranged attacks, you might think it's actually terrible for ranged weapons, especially since it says it gives ranged weapons a penalty on top of that. Though, funnily enough, this penalty doesn't exist. It just says it does. Only penalty you have is that no double dipping. Number 7. Energy Shield is a risky proposition for new players, since it is easily one of the most complicated skills in the game to basically properly balance between synergies, damage reduction, and balancing it with replenishment from various sources, including the almost necessary damage taken goes to mana % effect. Though none of this will save you from unique mana burn enemies which apply mana damage, I know I said that weird, at 256 times what they normally should with melee attacks. For today's bonus fact, we'll again be crossing the class lines. Sorceress skill on another body, but essentially some movement text with Blaze active can result in Ghost Fire that is visually there, but doesn't actually do any damage. As always, if you learned something new, hit that like button, and if you knew it all, feel free to brag below, and if I missed something you thought should be included, drop it in a comment as well.